never know. Maybe you can make friends by posting a YouTube video. Assalamualaikum. Mana. Sekarang di Inokashira Park. And I'm here with a special guest.
Hello!
I'm here with my friend Barno, and today we are going to do another episode of Muslim Monday. So I'm going to interview Barno about her experience being Muslim in Japan. So, can you introduce yourself?
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Barno and I've been living in Japan for 8 years. That's it. Almost 8 years, and I'm from Uzbekistan. Nice to meet you.
Great. And so when you first came to Japan, were you a student or doing something else? Maybe you can tell us a bit about that.
I came to study in Japan. I came as a student. I studied in Ritsumeikan and Asia Pacific University, and my major was international relations. I studied there for 4 years.
So international relations. Okay,
Yes.
great. I also did something similar. I did international studies, so I guess we're similar in that way. What did you know about Japan before coming here?
Well, before coming, I didn't know much about Japan. Of course, I knew about like kimono, sushi, but I didn't have deep knowledge about Japan, and I never had a dream to come to Japan to study or to live. I was just very passionate about studying abroad, and I was fine with any university outside of my country. And when I looked at scholarships, I found from Japan, and I applied, and that's how I came to Japan to study.
I see. Yeah, so it's kind of cool. So there's some people who come to Japan who really like have that passion for Japan, but in your case, you just wanted to study abroad. But I guess that's different now. Since how many years have you been in Japan now?
This year it's going to be my 8th year.
Wow. Okay. So I guess you feel differently now about Japan, and you.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy about living in Japan?
I really like the fact that it's a very clean country, it's very organized, and people are very polite here, and you see a lot of beautiful nature here. That's what I love about Japan,
Okay.
and it makes me happy to be here.
I see. So a lot about like the beauty of Japan itself, the environment, and some of the things that you can do. How about in terms of like the social environment that you enjoy?
Social environment that I enjoy. Well, as I mentioned, Japanese people are very polite, and so far I've never had any conflict or any difficulty to when communicating with Japanese people or when keeping some sort of friendships or social relationships, I would say. But as you probably also know, Japanese people are very reserved. It's a little bit hard to make friends with them. You need to put the first step yourself and talk to them. That's a little bit hard if you are a shy introvert.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a little bit hard to make friends, but if you find Japanese people who are open, and if you talk to them, you can make really good friends with Japanese people.
Yes, I agree. I do think it depends on the person, because I know of a lot of more outgoing Japanese people, or maybe they're not super outgoing, but it was easy to make friends with them. So I guess it probably depends like where you meet them and like how you meet them. But yeah. I think with anything, if you want to make friends with anyone, just to reach out and maybe make that first move. And how about in terms of being Muslim in Japan? How do you find your experience?
Being Muslim in Japan is not very challenging. It has its own challenges, but I find it not very difficult living here as a Muslim, because obviously especially in Tokyo, there are halal shops, halal restaurants, and praying rooms are also increasing in number. A lot of Muslims are moving to Japan and living, so it's not very hard to build a community here. So I don't find it very challenging. But halal food is not always accessible, especially if you live somewhere outside of Tokyo.
Yeah.
Mosques are very limited. There's many cities in Japan. There is no mosque. There is no halal restaurant, but you can find a way with like some vegetarian options or vegan options. And also the fact that Japanese people really respect other cultures. They always make sure that they're not breaking the boundaries. For example, when I had homestay experience in Japan and I stayed with a Japanese family, they learned a bit about Islam before I met them, because they knew I am Muslim, and they knew that I had to pray, so they provided special place for me. And
great.
also they considered my food restrictions, so they made sure there is no pork or there is no non-halal meat. So Japanese people being so polite, they always, from my experience, I can say that they respect Muslims very much, and they try to be as careful as possible to not do something that would go against religion or kind of upset Muslim person. So that's really great side of living in Japan.
Do you think that life will get easier for Muslims as time goes on, like in Japan specifically? In Tokyo?
Year by year, we can see that a number of mosques are increasing, number of halal restaurants are increasing, and number of Muslim people who are living in Japan is increasing. So I think it will get easier and more Muslim friendly.
How did COVID affect your life in these past few years?
It definitely had some impact, as I couldn't meet with my friends as often as I wanted, and also I had a baby during COVID, and it was a bit hard to I don't know, when you become a first-time mother, you kind of first at the beginning you need to spend more time with your baby, and you change as a person. Like you now have a new responsibility, and I've heard a lot of new mothers also go through the same experience. They feel a bit lonely because now you have a new role, and you have to be with your baby, and you are not very flexible with like meeting people or going to places, and on top of it there was COVID. So it was not very easy experience.
Your son now is about 2 years old?
About to turn 2.
When you had your son, it was during kind of peak pandemic time, so you weren't actually, your husband was not allowed to enter.
And for 5 days, like after giving birth, you have to stay in the hospital for 5 days, and no one was allowed to enter and meet me, and I was there by myself.
So it sounds like a very lonely and tough experience. So hopefully others won't have to go through what Barno had to go through. I think things are getting better, but you never know with this pandemic. So what do you do in Japan?
Before I graduated, I worked a bit, for 6 months I worked in a Japanese company, as I could finish my credits early, and I moved to a new city. I had what I want to say is I had a little experience of working in a Japanese company, but after that I moved to Tokyo, and I got married and started living in Tokyo. I am not working anywhere. After I moved to Tokyo, I did some internships, and I focused more on my YouTube channel, which I started back when I was a student in my third year, I think. So I'm not very active there, but I try to make content when I have mood for it. I'm not very consistent with it, but I wish I was. But
I think she's more consistent than I am. So if you Google or search like Muslim in Japan, I think Barno's videos, or a video with Barno in it, is probably going to show up, at least in the first page. So if you Google it, you will see his face. And that's actually kind of how we met, because I also had a YouTube video and she was on YouTube, and we connected through our shared platform, and then we met in person. We became friends. So I think sometimes, especially in today's age, there's a lot of different ways to make friends. So you never know, maybe you can make friends by posting a YouTube video. Have you ever experienced any discrimination or challenges as a Muslim or as a foreigner in Japan?
I did experience, I can say, especially when I was living in Beppu, which is in Oita Prefecture, and it's a very countryside area of Japan where Japanese people don't have a chance to meet foreigners very often. So when they see foreigners, they get a bit nervous, shy, and also even if you talk to them in Japanese, they'll be saying, "No, I don't speak English." Yeah. You see those kind of, not memes, but some funny
things
videos
on the internet. Yeah,
they're actually true. Because I personally experienced that. When I was in Beppu, I lost my way. I asked a Japanese lady about the place, and she looked at me and said, "Eigo wakaranai desu."
But you were speaking in Nihongo.
Yes, and I think I spoke pretty understandable Nihongo, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think sometimes people have this idea, like, they don't actually hear you, they just see you, and then they like somehow block their ears from whatever that other person's saying. Not in everyone's case, but it has happened to some people.
But I wouldn't consider it as a discrimination, because you can understand them. They're very it's a very nation country, so they haven't had many chances to meet foreigners, especially in countryside areas.
Yes.
They don't know how to talk to foreigners, and they get nervous very much.
Yeah. Because I guess maybe also in the media it kind of shows that foreigners don't really speak much Japanese, but I think actually that is not always correct, because I think there are a lot of foreigners that do speak Japanese. So I would think that your default should be, if they live in Japan a long time, that there's probably a good chance that they are trying to learn Japanese, or that they already speak Japanese, but probably depends on the person. Okay, but yeah, so I guess overall you've had generally a good experience with Japanese people here. And how about in the future? Do you plan to stay in Japan for the next little bit, or are you thinking of going back to Uzbekistan or a different country?
I, and also my husband, my family, we all love Japan very much. I hope my son also, although he now cannot speak well and he cannot express his opinion, but we all love Japan, and I personally would love to stay here as long as possible.
Okay.
For now, we don't have any plan to move back to Uzbekistan, but we really would like to go to other countries and experience life in different parts of the world, but not for long term, like a year or two. Both me and my partner, we love to come back to Japan always. Like wherever we go to, we want Japan to be our home and to always come back here.
That's great. So even though you started off with not really knowing much about Japan, you ended up falling in love with Japan.
Yeah, now I feel like it's my home. When I go back to Uzbekistan, I miss Japan badly.
Oh yeah.
I start feeling homesick.
For Japan.
Yeah.
And do you have any last messages that you would like to tell our Muslim viewers, or tell anyone in general?
My last message is, if you are interested in Japan, but you are afraid to come because you are Muslim and because you think that it might be difficult to practice Islam in Japan, I would say please don't be afraid. Just come and see and give it a try, and maybe you won't find it very hard as us, for example, right?
I don't
So,
think it's too challenging.
Yeah. And also I get messages a lot from Muslims outside of Japan who are very interested in Japanese culture. They really want to travel to or live in Japan, but they're afraid. So like they think they might be no mosques or Japanese people don't like Muslims. This kind of thoughts, and I would say no. Japan is very much Muslim friendly. Not very much, but enough.
Enough, and I think I would say it's increasing. So if you were to
Yeah.
move here in a couple of years, my guess is that it would be even more Muslim friendly than it currently
Yeah.
is.
So don't be afraid. Come to Japan and experience life here.
Japan and sakura.
Yeah, sakura is actually blossoming behind us. It's sakura season. So
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Assalamu
Thank you.
alaikum. Okay.
yes.
I have that whole list of questions, but no, I can't remember what they are, but I don't think it's these.
Both me and my partner. Let's wait for the train to
Okay.
pass.
Yeah.